Welcome to a very special live episode of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, November 15th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Minnesota game is in 3 days, the game against Michigan in 10 days. Buckeyes, obviously, trying not to look ahead. We're going to try not to look ahead too much in this show. There was a little bit of Jim Harbaugh talk. We'll hear what Brian Day had to say about that. Just the great Tim May doing the things that make him the great Tim May. But let's start a little bit with a little bit of injury talk. There was some, Ryan Day's not out there providing specific diagnoses or specific timetables. The answer he gave on defensive tackle Mike Hall was just like, at this point, we kind of have a sense for when he's not telling us, but telling us like, yeah, it's not a big deal. It was not a big deal the way he described the Mike Hall situation.
Yeah, it said he had no update on Mike Hall, which is Day speak for, it's not good. And if it's not bad, he'll say, yeah, we're hoping to get him back. Like when he doesn't give that, we're hoping to get him back, or it's nothing, it's he'll be fine. When he doesn't give you those answers, that's kind of like him saying he's not going to be back for the near future. And he didn't say that, so we're not for sure that that's the case. But when we're trying to interpret non-answers, some of these non-answers have become answers because it's the same answer he gave for Lathan Ransom. It's the answers he's given throughout the last couple of years with his availability, his injury rules, policy. And so to me, this is not great news for Mike Hall in terms of his availability for Minnesota and Michigan. Just no update is, I don't know, is that like a 4 to 6 week type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put a specific window on it, but it doesn't, it feels like based on the way he answered that question, it doesn't feel like it's real likely he's going to play this weekend. Beyond that, I think my likelihood in my head that he plays against Michigan dropped significantly with the way he answered that question. And that's true for Lathan Ransom as well. Lathan Ransom, this is not real breaking news that was a longer term thing. We've talked about that in previous weeks. But Day made it sound like that was not necessarily something they're expecting to have him back from in the next couple weeks, which, if you recall the start of the show, the Michigan game is in 10 days.
Yeah, he said he does not expect Lathan Ransom to be back for the regular season. Could be back towards the end of the season. Should something happen there where the season maybe I think is extended, then he would perhaps.
If they make a bowl.
If they make a bowl, perhaps. And, well, they are bowl eligible, correct, Kevin? But depending on the bowl, there's going to be that aspect of it, but won't be available for the rest of the regular season, which a year ago would be devastating. It's not great, but they're much more equipped to handle it this year than they would have been last year.
And a lot of the other guys in that secondary, I mean, they got Jahad Carter back last week. He was on the field against Michigan State. That's not really a one-to-one plug-and-play for Lathan Ransom. It sounds like that's going to be more of a Sonny Styles thing. That was what it was last week. Sonny Styles at that bandit or boundary safety position. Jim Knowles was asked about, what does Sonny do, maybe differently or better than Lathan? And had Jim Knowles was in a great mood today. So however you want to interpret that, Jim Knowles was feeling great about life today. Had a great answer on what Sonny Styles does, better than or differently than Lathan Ransom.
Yeah, the first answer was he's taller. So I don't know if that's a better than thing or just a different quality, but he is definitely taller than anybody else in the Ohio State secondary. One of the interesting aspects, because we've talked about this before, Sonny Styles does a bunch of different things. And when he was at nickel, he would be a nickel, he'd be a Sam, he would blitz. When you're the strong safety, you have to be the strong safety. And they're going to be playing other teams where they're not going to want him to just be the strong safety. So that's where getting Jahad Carter back and having him more involved, as Jim Knowles said, like they're going to still do some things with Sonny, and Ryan Day said the same thing. There are things coming with Sonny that they like to do. He's an effective blitzer, as we've seen at strong safety. We've seen it also at nickel. But it's good that he's not just – they don't just have to keep him back there, because I do assume at some point maybe will we see him as one of the 3 linebackers against a Michigan running 13 personnel, that sort of thing, where he's going to be up on the line of scrimmage, but you also maybe want to have Jahad Carter in the game as one of the deep safeties. I'm not sure how exactly they're going to want to do that, but they still have plans for him to do other things. They don't want to give him too much, but he's so versatile that you still want to be able to use him in different ways.
Yeah, and another guy who's going to be, maybe a little bit up in the air, definitely not as discouraging an update by any means in terms of injury, was Tommy Eichenberg, Mike linebacker, who obviously has been pretty darn effective for Ohio State over the last couple of years and would be a pretty significant player in, if the Michigan game, when the Michigan game rolls around, that's going to be potentially a pretty significant one for Tommy Eichenberg. Knowles said, Tommy has been much more communicative this week, as he was asked, basically told, like, yeah, you can't play, just, you have to sit out. We're very sorry.
Yeah, and Jim Knowles likes to talk about how Tommy grunts, but they actually, this was maybe the most he's talked, Tommy Eichenberg, in terms of saying, I want to play, let me play, get me out there. Maybe stamp down his hooves or something. I don't know, just get me out there. But it was just determined that for the betterment of Tommy, for the betterment of the team, and moving forward to hold him out. But I expect him to be back this week because I don't think you want to take 2 weeks off and then get into it against Michigan.
Well, and then the question is, if he does come back, what's better? Or is it better to be fresh physically but a little bit rusty maybe mentally, or is it better to be, knock a little bit of the rust off, even if you just play a quarter against Minnesota or you just play a couple drives or whatever, and risk, hey, can you potentially make an injury worse? You get hit wrong, whatever. That would be that's going to be an interesting calculus for this team in terms of figuring out how they want to handle that kind of situation. I don't know that there's necessarily a clear right answer there,
especially against a physical offense like Minnesota, where you are going to take a beating and you're going to have to be in there. So I don't know. It would be, maybe the ideal thing is to play a half, but you have to score enough to make sure that there's no longer a contest going on to get him out of there in the third quarter. But yeah, they'll figure it out and they'll do what's best. And that's trainers, that's coaches, that's Tom. He's played a ton. So if anybody could sit 2 games and then get right back into a fist fight, I think it'd be him.
And, getting to the point where the score is out of hand enough that you can yank your starters off the field. They did that last week. They did that against Michigan State. And, Kyle McCord played a little bit of extra beyond what, they pulled, the wide receivers and the starting, Trayvon Henderson was out, but you still had Kyle McCord in there behind the Ohio State offensive line. That being able to do that depends on how effective the offense is. And, can the offense put up 35 first half points again? If they can, well, that would go a long way to make, getting Michigan week started maybe a couple quarters earlier than it officially starts. And that comes down to the Ohio State offense playing well. And Ryan Day has seen like real tangible progress. I think we all have, but he talked about the fact that there's like significant growth, significant progress from this offense on the whole.
Yeah, you're getting guys back. I think it was Tim Megan asking about like this being a menu, and it's like a Cheesecake Factory menu where it's like 46 pages, but you don't want to just get lost in a menu. Like you need to maybe go in with an idea of what you want, and that's what you do from Sunday through Friday and Sunday through Wednesday as you're building the game plan. And you don't want to get lost in all of these different things because you still have to do what is best for the team, do what you do best, practice it, make sure you're doing the stuff that works in practice is what you're going to do in a game. You can't just throw stuff together. And they do have some things. We've seen the implementing of the 2-back sets more and doing stuff off of that. I still think we're going to see more of that. And I think we'll see some things come of that against Michigan as well. But you've got different guys, and you can now sit Marvin for a spell and bring in Carnell Tater, sit Emeka Ibuka, and bring in Xavier Johnson because they've got guys that they're completely confident in. And this is the time where when you have that depth this time of year and somebody goes out with an ankle or whatever, you move right in. But also in these couple of games, you can give guys a rest and you don't have to worry about it hurting the offense. And now you've gone from a 28-point lead to a 21-point lead because you're not moving the ball.
Yeah, I think back to the week before the 2017 Michigan game when Ohio State played Illinois in an absolute monsoon, and Ohio State was up by a bunch, and they pulled all the starters off the field, and it started raining, and the second-team offense, which was being led by Dwayne Haskins at that point, just couldn't do anything. I think he threw a pick, and Urban Meyer got really angry and put a bunch of guys starters back on the field. Like Billy Price, I think had like cut his tape off and is all of a sudden like back out on the field. And you gotta make sure the hay has really got to be in the barn before you really are ready to pull those guys off the field. But it does sound like Ryan Day sort of maybe changed his views a little bit on that. He talked about that after the game. Just you're managing things a little differently this time of year compared to how you might in the Youngstown State game in week 2 or 3, whatever that was.
Yeah, I also think we would have seen Lincoln Keynote sooner if the field position would have been better, because when they were taking guys out, they kept Kyle McCord in because they're still backed up, like inside their 10, inside their 20. And then once they got the ball out to midfield, then the first down at midfield, then you bring Lincoln Keynote in. He did say he probably would have put Devin Brown in sooner. Devin Brown, another guy maybe we should mention who should be back this week, should practice this week, but then Ryan Day said it also depends on what happens during warm-ups on Saturday.
Because, Devin Brown did kind of re-aggravate an injury during warm-ups. That's why you didn't see Devin Brown on Saturday. Someone else that you saw on Saturday in a little bit of a different spot was Matt Jones. He was, obviously has been the starting right guard all season. And when they were, once the game was kind of in hand, they kicked him over to center and brought in Enoch Vermahi at that right guard spot. That was one of those things that was kind of like, because you have, Matt Jones was, as a high school prospect, rated the number 1 center in the country, and then I don't think has actually played center, at least in any meaningful amount of time, but looked good. Carson Hinsman, his first year starting, young, probably not as physically developed as he probably ultimately will be. And Ryan Day was asked about that, and I don't, it did make it sound like a change there was imminent, but also didn't say like no chance.
Well, he did say they're going to continue with the 5 that they had, but also they wanted to know what it would look like if they went that way, and to get some of the idea of that on film, so that if you do eventually have to go against Michigan, Kenneth Grant, and their defensive interior, and Carson Hinsman isn't getting it done, then this won't be the first time that Matt Jones has taken some snaps. And they take snaps. Everybody, they have like 4 different guys taking snaps in practice. So he has done that. But in terms of getting into a game, obviously it's much different. So you get a little bit of action that way. I wouldn't be surprised if we see it again against Minnesota at this point. And again, not that anything is imminent, but you need to be at your absolute best in 10 days. And if things aren't going well up front, then at least you can make a move if you need to.
Yeah, and Enoch Vermahi actually started against Michigan last year at was it right tackle, and then Josh Fryer right guard, and then Josh Fryer came in for him after that. But Enoch Vermahi is someone who's been around for so long. He was a 2018 I think recruit for Ohio State, and has been around forever and has been a very useful backup, hey, break glass in case of emergency kind of guy. Obviously, we talked about Hinsman not being necessarily as physically developed as he's going to be. Vermahi has been here long enough that he is as physically developed as he's going to be. And, if that is a, rough and tumble kind of game in the trenches, maybe I would worry about, you always talk about the cohesion of the offensive line and guys working together and being in different spots. And, if you're the center, then you're making the line calls, and that's something Matt Jones hasn't had to do. So I don't think that's going to be something they're like rushing out to do, but I mean, if it's good to have options at this point of year.
Yeah, it is. Although, if this wouldn't be so late in the season and they were still very concerned, maybe you would give Matt Jones an entire game. But I don't think you can go an entire game now against Minnesota, just because of all of the moving parts. This is more of a on-field promotion type of thing, against Michigan.
Battlefield promotion, yeah. So that's I think the big stuff. Was there anything else that jumped out to you during the interview?
No, I believe Josh Proctor was mentioned as he'll be back, like that sort of thing. Like no concern there, but
yeah, Josh Proctor. You kind of got the sense probably could have gone last week if they needed him to, but
Emeka, they held him out of their own accord for the second half, and he's getting stronger each day. So
and Cade Stover obviously played the whole game, or played as much as any of the starters played, and had a really solid game. Do we have questions we want to get to?
Yeah, we do. I'll just see, is this a Melton type of game against Michigan? Their offensive tackle are susceptible to a speed rush.
Mitchell Melton, who got a little banged up at the end of that game, but is this a Mitchell Melton type of game? No, I think this is it could be anybody on that defensive end group because of what they saw from Carson Barnhart, the right tackle for Michigan, who had a rough game. But there weren't a ton of dropbacks in that game. I think they're going to try. What is the best matchup? Is it JT Tuimoloau against him? Just speed, power, that sort of thing. I expect them to really try to help him out, Barnhart out. But it's not like either tackle is fantastic, but the speed rush, he had no shot with that. And Mitchell Melton is a very fast rusher. I don't think they're going to bypass their other guys for that, though.
Well, and then the question is, okay, if it's not Tuimoloau or Sawyer, is that Kenyatta Jackson? Is that Caden Curry? It feels like we've mostly seen Kenyatta Jackson over the left tackle. Like we've mostly seen JT Tuimoloau over the left tackle, mostly seen Jack Sawyer over the right tackle, mostly seen Caden Curry over the right tackle. I wonder if, I get the sense that they feel like Kenyatta Jackson can be trusted to, not be reckless in his rush and not, last week you saw Chop Robinson would sometimes get too far upfield, and then that opens a lane for JJ McCarthy to run. So you get the sense that maybe someone like a Kenyatta Jackson might have, maybe that's an opportunity for him. But then it's just, boy, this is a real big moment for someone who has not, he's played a bunch, but he hasn't been in that kind of spot yet.
Are you suggesting the Carson Barnhart thing was like a rope-a-dope where you let him go by the first couple of times and then you start running right past him?
Well, they changed. It looked like they changed kind of how they were dropping back. And that was, and how often do we hear Larry Johnson talk about not getting behind the quarterback? And sometimes you get behind the quarterback, and that's partly Michigan, I think, changed things up a little bit partway through the game. And also partly just JJ McCarthy is pretty nimble back in that pocket. And, he's not, he can run, but he also can just kind of like do the like Stetson Bennett, let me just slide right past you there. Just a little dip or a little, a little stop or a little whatever, and just goes zipping past. I also wonder if you're going to see Sonny Styles be asked to try and go get the quarterback. We've seen Jordan Hancock be asked to try and get the quarterback. They're going to throw. Jim Knowles has not thrown a ton of blitzes out there this year, not nearly as many as last year. You wonder, what does that look like this not this week, but against Michigan?
Well, and if you're going to keep Max Protect in to help your guys, those guys aren't going out in route, so you can send more people to get after the quarterback.
Next one, Mark Fetters, do you guys think that Michigan and Ohio State will really have trap games this week?
I always, I think you always look at the game before the Michigan game in terms of both teams, what that week before looks like. Last year, they both had trappy games. Michigan played on the road at a good Illinois team and won, I think, 19-17. And I think, did they have to kick a field goal at the end of the game to win, or did Illinois have to miss a field goal at the end of the game?
I think Michigan
kicked it, I think.
Believe so.
Yeah, Michigan kicked it. We were watching that in the press box at Maryland, and I'm standing up there going, I should really be down on the field taking pictures, but I'm up in the press box with Tony watching the Michigan-Illinois game. And then Ohio State got out to a lead, and then Maryland came back and made it interesting into the final minute. I don't think I'm expecting that this weekend. I'm not expecting it from either team. Odds are one of the games is kind of interesting into the second half, just for whatever reason. Just, you're trying to get guys healthy. You're trying to not show too much. You're trying to, not. And I know everyone wants to say that you're laser focused on it. Everyone is aware of the schedule. Everyone is aware of what's on deck. Michigan's dealing with the whole Harbaugh thing, and either he's back and that's a big thing, or he's not back and that's a big thing. And you could see one of them having the game be interesting into the second half. I'm not expecting anyone to lose. I think they're both like 3 to 4 touchdown favorites.
Yeah, I could see Ohio State leading 20-3 at the half and winning 20-10, just like shutting things down. Michigan, I think they're so focused right now on each day because of what's going on, and focused on themselves, and of course focused on America, that I don't think they're going to be looking past Maryland. And frankly, with the quarterbacks that they face, they better not be looking past Maryland.
No, and Maryland now is not the Maryland team that Ohio State faced. That's, they have done the typical Maryland thing where they're, the trajectory is directly into the side of the mountain. That's just how every Maryland football season tends to go. But this is a neither Maryland nor Minnesota are, Chris Ash level Rutgers. Like these are not complete walkovers. These are teams that are, fine and bowl-ish. I think Maryland has already won 6 games. Minnesota is not there yet, but I think could potentially still get bowl eligible. They're fine. These are like pinstripe bowl level teams, and a team like that, if you really show a game, a pinstripe bowl level team can make your life real uncomfortable for 3 hours. But I'm not expecting that from either of them.
Next one here, Mika Hanna. Really need Emeka Buka back fully healthy for the Michigan game.
Yeah, getting Emeka fully healthy for that Michigan game would be significant. And he's healthy now, and they're seeing more explosion happening. I think you'll really know it when they start dialing some stuff up for him. And they did throw the ball to him. One pass down the field, there was an interference on him. So with as effective as everybody is, with Cade Stover being a difficult matchup, even Xavier Johnson with what they're doing now, and we'll talk more about this in a Buckeye Weekly at some point, but using him in that two-back set in a wheel route as well against a linebacker. But obviously with Emeka, they'll start dialing some stuff up for him, and he's going to be a difficult matchup for whomever. And the way they keep moving Marvin into the slot, they've got some pieces right now. And once they, I don't know if Emeka makes them bacon grease, that's really when things start getting cooking with him, because he's got all the potential that anybody else has in the nation. Ryan Day said he's one of the best receivers in the nation. We saw that last year, and I still feel like we're going to see that at some point this season.
And Cade Stover was back last week, but not 100%. So as he continues to get healthier and get Emeka back, and all that kind of stuff, Kyle McCord still has his left ankle wrapped real tightly. So there's a lot of guys who, if they can get a little healthier, that's going to only help things as they continue to improve.
Zombie Kill 79. McCord looked great against Michigan State, but they sent no pressure. Do you think we see Minnesota send more pressure to answer some of those questions or not?
So the challenge with sending pressure against Ohio State is you also want to be bracketing Marvin Harrison as often as possible. And at some point you run out of players. And that's a, do you want to die the death of 1,000 cuts, or do you want to, risk getting popped over the top? And I would expect Minnesota, just based on the fact that Minnesota has played in the Big Ten West all season, the sort of default answer there is, well, no one can throw worth a crap, so it's fine. Just sit back, make them try and go methodically down the field, and at some point the quarterback's going to accidentally throw one into the fourth row of the stands. So I think that's sort of the default answer for their defense. I think teams are probably going into games with Ohio State going, don't let Marvin Harrison beat you. And that feels like that's kind of been the answer, and that just makes it more amazing what Marvin Harrison is doing. Jim Knowles talked about that during the interview.
Yeah, Knowles talked about how early on in practice they had Marvin bracketed, and he still went up and caught it and yelled into the microphone, like, how can you let this happen? And the answer back to him was basically, that's Marv.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, what are you going to do? Try to stop it? I mean, You could try to stop it, but you've seen how that works. He ran through a double team bracket coverage in the first play of the third quarter when they went deep to him there. And that's a tough ask for anybody. I do think Minnesota will look at Michigan State and see, we saw what happens when you don't pressure Kyle McCord. You can do whatever you want to do to Marvin, and they didn't bracket him all the time. But if you just let Kyle McCord be comfortable, I think they're going to throw the ball all over you. And they're showing that they have the patience to dump it off. He did that 2 weeks ago against Rutgers. So if you want to try to make something happen, then go after it. Mm-hmm. Now, that may be like the Western Kentucky coach, where I'm just going to keep swinging at everything. Mm-hmm. I don't care where the pitch is. I'm swinging. Mm-hmm. If you do that, then maybe you can create something. Or do you just want to lose by a soft number? We did our best, but did you try to win it, or did you just try not to lose it by a bunch?
Well, it feels like teams are a lot. I mean, Greg Schiano tried to win it. Michigan State tried to not lose it by a bunch. And PJ Fleck, I don't know what PJ Fleck's going to do. PJ Fleck, famously not the most predictable human being on earth. So we'll see what he chooses to do there.
Kevin?
Yeah, next one here. From David Greenshield, thoughts on seeing Hayden in the second half? Need to get Trey rest.
Okay, so thoughts on seeing Dallin Hayden in the second half against Minnesota. Dallin Hayden has played 2 games. I don't think, at this point, I don't think you're going to see Dallin Hayden until they need to see Dallin Hayden, and or the number of remaining possible games is equal to or less than the number of games he can play without burning his red shirt. That has been, for whatever reason, that has been the driving factor behind the playing time decisions for Dallin Hayden, even though Dallin Hayden looked like Dallin Hayden looked against Purdue. I think you have a better chance of seeing Dallin Hayden in a theoretical college football playoff semifinal game than you do in this weekend's game against Minnesota.
Yeah, I would also say I don't expect him to play this week, but I view him as like you use everybody you have to get to Game 7. So I could see them using him against Michigan and the semifinal. And then it's like, we just need to get to the national championship game. You just have to get to Game 7. Doesn't matter how many starters you've used. Burn all the arms you can. If it gets you there, then you'll figure out Game 7. So I think right now you're seeing, obviously, Travion, and then he'll play a half, or ideally, he would play half. But then you have Chip, you've got Xavier Johnson, you've got Evan Pryor. Like, I don't think they need to play Dallin. And he's also shown that, I can sit a month and you can put me out there and I can go be the most effective running back on the team for, 11 carries.
Yeah. And, the other thing that goes into that is the idea of putting him in against Michigan if the situation calls for it. If they lose to Michigan, then you're not playing in the Big Ten championship game. You're probably not playing in the playoff, and then you've only got one bowl game left. So then you play him in the bowl game as well in that case. And if you beat Michigan, well, then I would agree with you. You at least have him in the game plan for the, not to look past Iowa and the Big Ten West in a possible Big Ten championship game. But yeah, I don't think you're necessarily using him there. If it is a break glass in case of an emergency situation, sure. But yeah, I'm with you. I think it's Michigan if needed, and then a college football playoff semifinal game if needed, and if not, then potentially the one that comes after that.
Kevin,
we got a couple more. We got 3 in the queue. Wingman Ted, do we expect OSU to go hard and be riskier in the first half to bench starters to prep for next week even sooner?
Yeah, I expect them to be aggressive in the first half. I wouldn't be surprised if they take the ball. I think they didn't mind losing the toss this past week. I think you get as many snaps for the offense as you can, then get them out of there, take the ball, go up and down the field, get them out. Like, there's no reason to defer unless you just want Devin Brown to maybe have an extra snap in the second half.
Well, I would not necessarily expect that. I understand the thinking there, but how often do you see the starters are in for the first half and the first drive of the second half, and so you get into halftime? I'll just use your score 20-3, and then you get them in there, and either they go down and kick a field goal, or they go down and score a touchdown, and it's 23-3, 27-3, whatever it is, and then now you're 27-3, you're up 3 scores. Okay, great.
All right, here we go. Get ready for this one. Steve Buckholz, do you guys prefer an upright, gently used upright? Let me clean it up here. Do you guys prefer an used upright or canister vacuum cleaner with low hours?
No, canister. It's easy enough to dump out. I don't know if people use the bags anymore. Have you ever tried to install a bag?
I have, and I did, but that was like 20-something years ago.
Yeah, so I figure you just put the whole house vacuum in. Have you seen those with you pull the hose out of the wall or whatever, and you're just like do.
I have seen those. I have never had one of those. So we are a canister household, and it has worked just fine.
Yeah, exactly. Boom, pull it out, dump it in, boom, all easy.
I've never bought one used before, which
we don't.
My sense is, boy, you get quite an experience with dealing with the seller if that does happen.
Not used, refurbished.
Pre-owned.
Pre-owned.
1 out of 10 would not recommend.
I believe also pre-loved for like clothing, not vacuums. Kevin.
Oh boy. Last one, Odysseus. Which one of you two, Tom or Tony, would fare better in a wrestling match with the Gopher mascot?
Goldie the Gopher.
Is the Gopher known for wrestling?
All the better if he's not, right?
I
Or
mean,
her.
feels like you just grab that tail and just start swinging. That I don't know that I.
The mascot, not just a regular one, the big plush thing.
Well, I know. Yeah, the big plush thing. Yeah,
Sure.
you just grab the tail.
You're going to be able to lift the whole mascot up by the tail.
The tail's going to rip off, Tom.
Well, then
If
if you get the thing twirling, the centripetal force, even when it does rip, you're flying. That you are airborne for a while, and you don't know where. I mean, are we on the sidelines and you're right? You know, the wall's right there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of bad stuff that can happen, even with a plush head on.
But as long as the plush head stays on, maybe they could survive the fall, and then they would just give up. Like, okay, had enough.
You know, the tail could rip off, but also those are not real teeth. Like the teeth look mean, but I do not believe they are real.
Plus,
teeth.
you start whipping somebody with a tail, that can still sting. That could put an eye out, even a fake plush eye. So now, I would not want to take on a mascot with googly eyes. That is creepy.
Yeah, no, Purdue Pete comes my way. I am running like I'm in a horror movie, and I'm running upstairs like a moron. But I am running upstairs as Purdue Pete is chasing me with his sledgehammer. Not even a question.
The good news is Purdue Pete can't get up the stairway because of the head. So
that will do it for us. Thank you guys all for your incredible questions. You are all valued parts of the show, and we could not do it without you. We will be back live later on tonight. It is a Tuesday, which means it is a college football playoff ranking show. And lucky us, this is the week when they have stupid college basketball on, so the show doesn't start until 9 o'clock or sometime after 9 o'clock if the first game goes to overtime, which somehow it feels like it does more often than it should. So we'll be back at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle at 9 p.m. on Tuesday for that. The call with the committee with Hey Boo that starts around 9:45. So we're guessing 9 to 10:15, give or take. Should be an interesting week. There was speculation that maybe Ohio State got jumped last week. That did not happen. Georgia had another impressive win. Michigan finally played someone. It'll be interesting to see where those three teams stack up, because Ohio State had a good win, but not against great competition. So we'll be talking about all that stuff a little later on Tuesday evening at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Make sure you join us there, and make sure you join us at BuckeyeHuddle.com, where we cover the Buckeyes. Mark covers recruiting. We got Ross and Mickey and Devin covering X's and O's, making you a smarter football fan, all on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.